Hey guys, today I'll be interviewing the author of The Dynamic Power of the Southern Shaolin Kung Fu, Ron Willer. How are you doing, Ron Willer?
I'm doing good. How's everybody going?
Thank you, thank you. I would like to ask a few questions, and I got very interested in the Jiao Ga system. Could you introduce yourself to the audience, please, of who you are?
Yeah, my name is Ron Wheeler. I've been studying martial arts since 1977. I started when I was 12 years old. I started in the Jiao Ga system under my late Sifu. He just passed away early this year. Under Dean Chin in his school later in '81, and been with the system pretty much ever since. I dabbled in a couple other things. I did some Hong Kong for a little bit. Dabbled in the Chun Long 7-star praying mantis for a bit under Glenn Tapscott, who came from Chun up in New York, or the late Sifu Chun in New York. But I've pretty much been doing Jiao Ga ever since. I mean, yeah, 37 years doing one thing.
Thank you so much. I would like to ask you for the audience, what is Jiao Ga? What is actually Jiao Ga? Like, what's the combination? Because there's so many martial arts. I used to take Hung Fut system. You know what is Hung Fut, right?
Correct.
Right, right. It's a combination of Hung Gar and Fut Gar, but now I'm into Wing Chun. But can you give a little bit like description to what is Jiao Ga?
Sure. Jiao Ga, the old name is Hong Tao Choi Mei, which stands for the translation is the head of Hong and tail of Choi. Some people will say a longer name, which was Hong Tao Choi Mei Bak Siu Lam, which covers all three styles that make up the Jiao Ga. So Jiao Ga is a combination of the Hong Ga, which is its base, then the Choi Ga, and then the Northern Shaolin. Jiao Long, the founder or the main founder, he and his four other brothers originally did the Hong Ga from their uncle, Jiao Hong Hei, who was a student of Wong Kei Ying, the father of Wong Fei Hong. So our Hong Ga comes from Wong Kei Ying, not his son Wong Fei Hong. And then he learned the Choi Ga did the Northern Shaolin in the Keluxi Temple in Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia, and then combined all that into what you have known to what we now know as Jiao Ga. It was renamed Jiao Ga after he died in 1919.
Okay, I noticed a similarity between Hung Fut and Jiao Ga. Is there a similarity to that?
Yeah, well,
go ahead.
Yeah, we share a common system with the Hong style, with the isotonic movement. So anytime you have, I think, Jiao Ga and the Hong Fut, no, so it would be Jiao Ga, Hong Ga, system like Fu Jiao Pai, anything that has any type of isotonic movement where you're pushing, looks like you're pushing against the wall, and the arms are vibrating, you're doing more Hei Gong or hard Qi Gong. The punches that we have in the Jiao Ga as opposed to the Hong Fut punches are definitely more straighter and more linear based on the Hong Ga system, because that's its base. And then you add the Fut Ga or the Buddha palm to soften things up and smooth it out a little bit. Where we come in as far as the difference, so we have the straight and the circular. So the same punches you would see in Choi Fut, like Sao Choi, Pao Choi, Cup Choi, Biu Zhong, or Bean Cup. We share those same punches. We share the same exact punches as Choi Fut and the Choi Ga.
Oh, okay. Did I ask you when do you learn Jiao Ga and what made you learn Jiao Ga?
I started doing Jiao Ga again back in '81, but originally I wanted to do it earlier. Detective shows like I Spy and The Avengers and The Saint, they were always doing martial arts. And they had movies like, with the late Robert Coburn, Man Like Flint, In Like Flint, and of course watching the original Star Trek with William Shatner, or what we call Shaq Fu, where he'd jump across the table and fly inside, kick somebody or chop somebody across the neck. I was always interested in that. And then of course the old Kung Fu TV series with the late David Carradine. Once I saw that, I wanted to do Kung Fu. But at that time, you know, my elementary all the way through high school, I went to Catholic school all my life. And, you know, my parents were like, you know, I told them, I want to do Kung Fu. I want to do Kung Fu. And they said, okay, let's weigh this out. Catholic school, all thoughts of doing Kung Fu. And what happened was Chinatown in DC at that time was really kind of a rough place to hang out. And she wasn't going to let her preteen son go to Chinatown and hang out. So what happened was I was learning Taekwondo at the time in my neighborhood in the Adams Morgan section of the city in Washington, D.C. And Randy had a class in the same building that we were in, but a space above us. So one day after my class, I went up to his class, not knowing what they were teaching. I just heard these sounds. And I looked, and they were teaching Jiao Ga. And at that time, you have to remember, Jiao Ga is the oldest Kung Fu system in D.C., Maryland, Virginia, West Virginia, and I think Delaware and Pennsylvania that taught authentic Kung Fu. And the school was very popular. So everybody wanted to know, people that learned Jiao Ga back in 74, 75, 76. They don't practice anymore. But if they, you know, have done martial arts and they found this, oh yeah, I did Jiao Ga in Dean Chin School. It's amazing how many people I've just bumped into, you know, on the subway, on the bus, you know, that have done Jiao Ga. It's amazing.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you so much. What are the principle or philosophy of Jiao Ga?
The philosophy is of the Jiao Ga is in the poem. I would have a hard time trying to say it in Cantonese, but it's basically in two couplets. And you know, couplets run, they're the principles that govern whatever system you practice. And the one couplet says, one half of the poem is basically to leverage your opponent's energy to your perspective. So that's pretty much the philosophy of Jiao Ga. You know, it shouldn't be two bulls just ramming each other. Again, use your opponent's strength against him, is basically. Let your opponent do the work for you. And then always expect the unexpected. Like, just because you got him down doesn't mean he's out. You know, or just because you hit him doesn't mean he's going to drop. You know.
Oh, okay. Thank you. Can you give us tips when practicing Jiao Ga?
Yeah, I mean, the main thing is foundation. A lot of people, it's different. It's different when I came up. I came up, anybody that's my age or older, you know, especially my age, we came up under what I call, learned, that had been teaching, let's say, in the 50s, 60s, 70s. We came up under there, under those guys. People like Ma Sifu, Wei Hong in New York, or Wong Tak Fei that teaches Charlie Flutt in San Francisco. People like that. We came up under those guys. So we went through the heavy stance training. We went through, you know, head punching over and over and over again, and learning one form at a time. Not, you know, I pay my money to you, I learn this form, and then I learn the next one. No, it was, you're here to learn, and if you don't meet the criteria to move on to the next thing, then you're just stuck here. So, you know, and it's too hard to teach like that now. It's very difficult to run a commercial way of learning. So any tips for Jiao Ga? Foundation, 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 foundation. When I was in Hong Kong back in 2009, I met with the then chairman of the Jiao Biu Athletic Association, and he was a second generation Jiao Ga practitioner. His father had learned from Jiao Biu, and so he had actually seen Jiao Biu as a small child himself during the course of his life. But he said Jiao Biu always stressed foundation, foundation, foundation. That's because that's what's going to benefit you later on down the road.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Foundation. So basically, everything that we have to do is start always from the basic, right? But let me see. I'm trying to think of a way. Okay. Why did you create your book?
Well, the first book, what happened was I started working the first book, which was The Power of Shaolin Kung Fu. I started working on that back in 2001. And then I sort of shelved it because I was like, I don't know. And then what happened was I made the U.S. team in 2004 and went to the first World Traditional Wushu Festival and Championships in Shenzhou, China. My mother had just died in March of 2004, and that was the last thing she and I discussed, was me trying out for the team. Because I told her, I said, look, I'm 39. I'm not sure, how much, longer my body's gonna be able to do this. I want to try it one more time to go to China. And she thought it was a good idea. And then she passed away, unfortunately. But so after she passed, after I made the team and represent, I was the only Jiao person on the team and won double gold in both my events. I met two guys, Casey and Perry, that were from the Hong Kong team that also did Jiao and knew Chen Manchung. So they knew my Qigong. They referred to him as Siba, which is older uncle. And so, unfortunately, they spoke English. So I got lucky there. And so they went back and got back to Hong Kong and told Chen Manchung all about me, that they had met me, that I had won these divisions and such and such and this, that, the other. And so I decided, I'm going to go ahead and do the book. But I needed to get permission. So I asked through my seeing Li Han, I asked him, what do I do? He said, do a letter. I did the letter in English and Chinese, send it to Chen Manchung. He contacts Han here in the States. Han calls me on a Sunday morning and tells me that Chen Manchung has given me permission to do the book based on my performance in China. So I had carte blanche. The photos in the first book that you see a photo of him in the front and then a photo of him, two photos of him when I talk about him in the book. He sent those personally. He sent those over here because he wanted those photos in the book. I didn't use all of them. I'm actually going to use some in the third book I'm working on now. But
you're working on the third book. What's it called? I mean, I was gonna get the second book, that new book that just came out, right, with the DVD.
Right. No, that's the first book.
Oh, that's the first book.
That's the first. You have the second.
Oh, I have the second. Okay, so the third book. What's the third book called?
So the third book, I haven't gotten a working title yet, but the third book will have 4 sets. It'll have the double-headed staff, or Sun Tao Guan. It'll have one of our other advanced forms, Fu Pao Kin, the Tiger Cougar. It'll have the double broadsword set, or double sabers, which is the Subji Mui Fao Sundo, and then a set I created or put together for a student of mine to improve their footwork, called Seal Subji Kin, or small cross pattern fist. So that'll have 4 sets in it.
Does Jiao Ge have any like drunken boxing form? I'm just curious because I remember back then I was learning Hong Fut and they had like just a word on like drunk boxing, and also drunken boxing was one of my favorite for Jackie Chan. You watched the drunken boxing with Jackie Chan, right? And
yes.
Yeah.
The Jiao Ge, of the original sets, there's one of the branches that teaches a drunken boxing set. I believe it's a branch out of Singapore. It could be Hong Kong, but originally there was no drunken set in the system. The original base of the system, as far as the forms, there was no drunken set.
Okay. I read in your book you like tiger claw or tiger. Why? Like what's the symbol behind it?
Well, yeah, I grew up, like I said, I came up in the 80s, so we were at the we had a theater here in DC down in Southwest at LaFont Plaza called the American Theater, which was one of the theaters owned by Shaw Brothers. So I watched Shaw Brothers movies left and right back then. I still have a massive collection now of Shaw Brothers DVDs. As a matter of fact, I was just at the Urban Action Showcase yesterday in New York, and it was given at the AMC Theater on 42nd Street. And I got a chance to meet Lu Feng from Five Deadly Venoms. So that was pretty cool. That was pretty cool. He looks great. He looks great. So to your listeners out there, Lu Feng was in movies like Kid with the Golden Arm, he plays the centipede in Five Deadly Venoms.
It's been a long time I watched that, but yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, he plays Chun and Two Champions of Shaolin. So he was a classic staple in the Shaw Brothers. He played mostly villain characters. A couple times he played good guys, but mostly villain characters. You know, he's really fun to watch on screen. I got a chance to meet him yesterday. But back to your question, as far as those maneuvers, you know, you have to remember the late director Lau Kar-leung was a Honga stylist, and so there was always Honga being demoed, being displayed on screen. So you got a chance to see, you know, tiger catches the lamb, single tiger exits the cave, tiger pushes the mountain, you know, things like that. Tiger rakes the sand. So you got to see all those techniques all the time. And so because Jiao Ga's, you know, most Southern long range styles are tiger claw based, like the Hong Fat, Hong Ga, Chole Fat, Fat Ga, you know, things like that. It showed you how to apply those techniques. And so I kind of fell in love with tiger claw techniques. I mean, it's still my favorite technique to apply when I'm free sparring, stuff like that. So, but there's always a time and place to do it.
Oh, okay. The Hung Foot system is very interesting. I'm not comparing it. It's just that, do you guys have because basically I believe that every system is really unique, so I'm not biased against anything. I'm more a curious person. That's why I do the interview. But also, I think Jiao Ga has lots to offer to the world. And also, I would like, do they have animal system inside? Because the Hung Foot system has the animal like tiger, crane. Because I know that they have the crane in there, right?
Yeah. Now the book that you have, which is the second book, has the longest form in our system of all the old forms, which is Dai Fok Fu Kim, big subduing tiger fist. So there are not a lot of claws in the form per se, but what it is a representation of a tiger, of the endurance that you need to have. Tigers have great endurance. Small tiger, Sil Fok Fu Kim, which is small subduing tiger fist, which is in the first book that has a DVD. That's basically representative of a young tiger, like almost like a cub, full of energy, you know, moving. Big tiger is again, it's basically a two-part form. It's a chi building, chi releasing form. So the closest comparison to that would be if you look at the Honga system and you look at their first form that they normally teach, which is the Gunji Fok Fu Kim. And that form is all this isotonic movement, all this tension. And then you do it on both sides. And then at the end, and then once you finish all the tension, then you release the form and do all these techniques. And Big Tiger is akin to that. So there's where the Honga is influenced in that set. Big Tiger is a long set, man. I mean, and normally it takes, if you do it properly, it should take you anywhere between 6 to 10 minutes to do properly with the proper breathing. So it's about, again, having the endurance of a tiger. So then you have Fu Pao Kin, which is a combination of tiger and then leopard techniques. And we nickname it for us here in the States, we nickname it Big Tiger's little brother. It has isotonic movement in the form, but not as much. So it's not as much Qigong building. So now you're not concentrating so much on energy. You're going back into building energy or improving it. But it's more akin to fighting, and it's about the strength of the tiger and the speed of the leopard. So, I mean, there's the leopard section, you're moving fast. And that's one of the traits of Jiao Ga, is one of the nicknames is the fast hands of Hong. And it's not an insult to the Hong Ga system. It's basically, if you were to continue developing the Hong Ga system, then Jiao Ga is where it would go. It's basically like that. Because our hand techniques are faster, and where Hong Ga basically is one movement, two movement, stop. And the Jiao Ga will do one step and do three movements, three hand techniques all in one time. So that's the way the system is designed.
Okay. Who did you look up as a martial arts? Because a lot of for like Bruce Lee, a lot of people like Bruce Lee, the role model.
Oh yeah, no, I love Bruce. I love Bruce. But it's funny. I said in an article that I'd written back in the day for Kung Fu Tai Chi magazine. A lot of the heroes I liked were, again, a lot of the stars from Shaw Brothers, Ocean Shores, Golden Harvest, things like that. So people like Lau Kar Leung, you know, and then Liu Chao Wei, or his English name is Gordon Liu. People like who I just met, Lu Feng, you know, the Venom, what they nicknamed the Venom Mob. People like that. Lo Mang. Lo Mang was, I like Lo Mang, and Lo Mang is actually a very good. He's the first person to demo or display the Chao Gao Tong Long, which is the Chao family Southern Mantis on screen. So a lot of what you see him do, if you look at like Kid with the Golden Arm or Shaolin Rescuers, he demos a lot of Southern Mantis in there because that's his base system. I believe he's also learned Chole Fut, and I just found out from one of my Sihings earlier today, who asked me how the event was in New York. He evidently did Chao Ga, but he still refers to it by its old name, which is the Hong Tao Choi Mei.
Ah, okay. How can we master Chao Ga, and what can we do when we learn the form, and how can we use it, the technique in the form, in a fight or in sparring, or how can we use it effectively?
Well, I would always recommend. I mean, the books are basically a guide, and it's to guide you along. It gives you an insight into the system, but you really need to get to a good school. You really need to get to a good school and a good Sifu and learn properly. But the books are there to guide you along. It's also to help preserve material. One of the things the founder of Chole Fut, Chen Hong, said was, people forget, so write it down. So that's why if you look at Chole Fut, like Dr. Fei Wong Sifu, he has a lot of manuals on Chole Fut, a lot, from his teacher Lao Bun, from Wong Gong, from the Kong Chao branch. So he has all these manuals because people forget. Now you can put it on video and or put it on DVD and record it, because we forget. And even my Sifu Chen said, you know, you know, it's okay if you forget the form, because somebody can always reteach you the form. But the techniques you should never forget. You should always remember how to apply certain things. As far as applying technique, my personal belief is that I'll preface it with this: if you can make it look like the form and carry it off and defend yourself, not a problem do I have with you. My problem is people that try to make it look like the system, because they want to make it look exactly like the system. Like, it's got to be a bow and arrow stance. I've got to make this, hold this posture like this, and it doesn't work. And I'm like, well, it needs to be adjusted. You know, you're not on a muck jump, you're not hitting a heavy bag. You're dealing with a live person when you're dealing with a fighting situation. And so you have to adjust to what's going on. I think tournaments is an excellent way to find out what works and what doesn't work. And I competed for years and years and years. I fought, and even though you have rules and gloves and equipment, you need to adjust your system according to that and see what you can use from the system in the scope of what you're doing right then and there. Too many people they say, well, I want to make it look like this. I'm like, I'm not arguing with you what you want to make it look like, but that's not working. So why don't you make some adjustments so you can get the W, as we call it? And that's the thing I say. You know, they want to do, you know, I don't know if you can see it, they want to do a Jin Sao and they want to block and then do it exactly like the form. And it's like, you know, dude, he's got gloves on and it's a jab. Why don't you just take this part? Just block. You know, take that part. You don't have to do all of it. Just take the parts that you need. And even Sifu, you know, I'll tell you a quick story. Before I got into school, my Sings told me Sifu had gone back to Hong Kong in the early 70s, like 74 or 5. And he came back and he had all, you know, 8mm, you know, tapes, you know, the old, you know, real tapes. So he came back with some footage of different fights, full contact matches, and they had gloves on. And my scene said, they were like, see, well, how come they're not sitting in this stance and using this technique? And he said, you guys watch way too many movies. You know, he said, that's not the reality. He said, that's not how this stuff works. He said, you know, you have to make adjustments. And I believe in that. I believe in that. And that's why, you know, that's where people go wrong. You know, they try to do it exactly. I get it, you know. And again, if you can make it work like that, okay, God bless you. I got no problem with it whatsoever. Really, I don't. But when people say, you know, I sparred a guy, you know, I'm not going to mention the system he did, you know, because it's a good system. And I sparred this guy because I work in UFC gyms. So I sparred this guy, and he's a little bit taller than me, and he wants to do it exactly like the system says. And I said, listen, your system is very well known. It's a good system. It's a Northern style. I said, but man, you know, come on, we're in the ring and we got gloves on. Come on. You know, you want to do all this, you know, all this stuff. And, you know, I'm like, come on, man. You know, meanwhile, I'm bang, bang, bang. You know, there's no difference between a Sao Choi and a hook punch. There's no difference. We're talking about a circular punch on a horizontal plane. That's what we're talking about. Who cares if you're standing up on a bow and arrow stance? It's still a hook punch. You know, if you do a Pao Choi, which is a long-range uppercut, or what's the difference? The angle of attack is exactly the same. The way you position your hand is exactly the same. One's in a long stance, one's in a short stance. It's still an uppercut. You know, so, you know, and that's why in my first book I talk about, there's a chapter called Boxing, the Missing Piece. A lot of people, and some people got upset. I'm like, listen, I'm just being real. You know, you guys want to make it look like the system. I'm trying to get the W, okay? And we're dealing with gloves, and we got rules and regulations and things we can't do, things we can do. You need to work within those confines. Now, self-defense-wise, it's the same thing. People want to look like this. I'm like, you're trying to save your life. Don't screw around. Don't screw around. Keep it simple, keep it direct, and go home.
Right. How can, like, yeah, I totally hear what you're saying. Like, I've seen it too many times. Like, when we try to do like fixate on the whole system, how can we, as a practitioner or as yourself, how can we adjust for like in a sparring, or because it's hard sometimes when we believe in this system, but we want it to. I guess what I'm trying to say is, how can we be flexible without being stubborn? You know, too many people are, like you said, like people, the seafoods get angry. So how can we adjust that? Like to fighting.
Yeah, Chen Min-chung, when he had 3 visits to this country, he came in 74 before I got into the school. He came in 88, 3 years after Sifu had died, and he came in 91. And his second time was the first time I met him. And I met him 3 times. I met him in 2009 when I went. He was in fair health. He wasn't in great health. He was in fair health. But the 2 times I met him, he was in good health. So in 88, I was 23. And I was an assistant instructor under the Wong Chinese Boxing Association under Raymond Wong. And I asked him, translated through his son. He has 2 sons, Philip and Francis. Philip is the youngest. And I asked him, you know, what else, did he ever learn anything else other than Jiao Gan? And he told me no. And I'm thinking, come on, you're in Hong Kong. How could you not learn something else? You know, you got all these guys, all these famous teachers. And he said, no, Jiao Gan is all I've ever done. And he says, and he told me, Jiao Gan has whatever you want. It's up to you to pull it out. Now, and I took that to heart. So I look into the system. So the best part, I guess, the second part of that question is, how can you make adjustments? How can